This is fabulous.
So silly. Okay, what are we talking about?
It's
now?
wonderful. Well, I really, yeah, I've got bits and pieces of your story, and when you came to Madison, it was wonderful. People were riveted.
You're so kind.
It was very nice, but I'd like to if you could, just so we can actually get an actual oral history of it, so that I can actually use a sequence of events. Let's just start there, and then I might ask you some questions about it.
Start with?
Just with the events in your life, what led you up to that moment, and what effect it had on you.
Okay. Well, I was born in the struggle, I guess. And that sounds kind of cliche as an African American for me to say that. But my grandmother was a member of an organization called the Dallas County Voters League. The Dallas County Voters League was formed in the 1930s here in Selma by Sam and Amelia Boynton, who were our farm extension agents. They saw the need for Africans in our community to have power through the ballot, thereby that we could make changes in our community. Now, I grew up in a generation of children who were supposed to be seen and not heard, so grandmother would take us to the meetings. My mom died when I was a baby, that's why grandmother had to take us to meetings. But we had to sit quietly while they talked and strategized. There was no such thing as you go outside and play while you go watch television while they strategize. You sat there quietly and didn't interrupt. So I sort of internalized movement and struggle like children today learn the songs from the radios without seeing the lyrics in print, okay? And they can sing every song that comes on the radio, no matter how bad it is, but they can sing it. And I thought that was a way of life. I didn't have anything else to compare it to say, this is not a normal childhood. This is, it's just the way it was. I remember the first time my grandmother took me to the courthouse with her. I was excited because I had never gone in this big important building. Here in Selma, we have very few buildings that are over 2 stories high, right? And here's this courthouse that's huge, and I'm a little girl and I'm looking up at this building, this big important building, and I have no idea what goes on in this building, but grandmother decides to take me with her that day. And along with about 60 to 80 other women and children, we left Brown Chapel AME Church and came down Selma Avenue walking, and as a group, and we were walking 2 by 2. And I remember grandmother being near the front. And as we climbed the steps, I saw this white lady, hurry to the door, and she has this sheet of paper in her hand with some writing on it. And she placed it in the window, and I assume it had tape on it because it stayed in the window. As I got closer, I saw it said, "Out to lunch." I was like, dog, white people sure eat early. Grandmother wouldn't feed us till noon, and it was 9:30 in the morning. They already eating
out
lunch.
To lunch at 9:30. Oh.
So they stood there. The women stood there, and I was kind of confused as a child why you were standing there out to lunch. Maybe grandmother would go take us to lunch, go home and give us lunch. So, and since we were downtown, you usually got a treat when you came to what we call downtown. That she would get us something from one of the cafes.
Penny candy or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe she would take us for that while they were eating lunch, right? But the women just stood there, and I heard this noise behind me, and I looked back and I saw it was 2 yellow school buses. I was so excited. I mean, this has to be my best day. I looked back and saw the buses, and I had never ridden a bus. I wanted to ride a bus, a school bus, a yellow school bus. It looked like so much fun. I've seen the white kids on the yellow school buses, but I had never seen black kids on the yellow school buses. And here they were that close to me. You see them riding down the street, but you didn't see them. You couldn't get on it. So I saw the bus, and to my surprise and to my happiness and delight, the policeman came and started leading the women to the
buses.
And they actually were getting on these yellow buses.
You were going to get to ride the bus.
Oh, I was so excited I could hardly contain myself. I said, "Grandma, can I sit by the window?" She said, yes, baby, you can sit by the window. I was so happy. I probably was the only person on the bus happy. But I was so happy. And the bus started up and it started to move. I'm riding this yellow school bus. It was the happiest day of my life. It lasted about 1 minute. It rolled around the corner, rolled about 3 blocks, and stopped right in front of our city jail. I said, Grandma, why are we here? And she said, they're going to arrest us. And I began to cry. And she said, don't cry, baby, things are going to change. And right after that, we started going to mass meetings. I understood later that the first mass meeting, Mr. Boynton died, and it was actually a memorial service for him.
Mhm.
But it turned into a mass meeting because Mrs. Boynton said, just before Mr. Boynton died, he grabbed her hand and pleaded with her not to stop the work they were doing with voter registration. And they had been working for 30-some odd years. Mr. Boynton had been beaten by a white man here who said that Boynton was a troublemaker, and that niggas didn't need to register because we vote for them, and he was causing trouble. And Mr. Boynton tried to talk about the merits of blacks not having the right to vote, and the man became enraged and beat him, and he never fully recovered.
When was that?
Mr. Boynton died at 63, so this happened between, I'd say, 61 and 63. And he never really recovered from that. He died, and Mrs. Boynton told the audience what he said, and it became that first mass meeting. Right after that, SNCC came to Selma. Bernard Lafayette and came, and I forgot the other man's name, Jim Lawson, came. And Bernard began to, they began to organize students, right? And they went to Selma University first. And then the students at Selma University would talk to us. So by the time the rest of SNCC got here, they were already semi-organized. I wasn't. It was mostly males who were
And
organized.
SNCC is what?
The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
So this was to learn the aspects of nonviolent
Right.
protest.
Right, I didn't like that. My sister began going to SNCC meetings and trainings. I learned later because her boyfriend was there. And she's married to him today, okay? But,
So even as a kid, because you were pretty young at this point, you're talking about 64?
right. I was probably about 9 and
9 years old.
And I remember vividly the 8-year-old going to jail. I said, I got around to jail and I'm 8 years old. But the funny part there was that I was not the youngest that was there. They were up in your arms because your mother took you where, right.
Well, they're probably pregnant women even.
Exactly, exactly. Well, after that, they started marching, right? We started marching, and of course,
just local marches here.
yeah, and here in Dallas County. Now, as a child, I was isolated. That it wasn't like we got in the car and went to Montgomery.
Right.
You know, those things you just didn't do, particularly poor people. Everything we needed was in our community, and there was no need to outreach because we were poor. To get to these places cost money, and then unless you were going to Aunt so-and-so's house, you just didn't go to another city. I had never been to Montgomery. I had never been to Birmingham. I had never been to Marion. And it's only 30 miles of little rural place. I had never gone to those places. That they seemed so far away to me. That then you would hear about it, and
so these would be marches like from Brown Chapel to downtown, or around downtown, or something like that.
To the courthouse.
To the courthouse.
Just to the courthouse. You went to the courthouse because that's where the voter registrars are.
Okay.
And always, you rarely got in. And
how often did these marches happen?
sometimes every day, sometimes all day. Sometimes all
Really?
day. Particularly when the students became really involved. In the beginning, adults would march, but remember, we were poor. Adults had to work, right? And there was always the compromises, you know, that, okay, we'll let 10 of y'all in. But today and next month, on the one day the registrars are open, we'll let 10 more in. okay, and then maybe one of those passed. Okay, so
Oh, my goodness.
that, it was so funny.
Totally a conspiracy to keep the black vote from happening.
Exactly. Now, I know now that in pockets around the black belt, there were separate um, organizations that,
Like this was going on in Marion too at the
right,
time. Right.
right,
They were having their own local marches,
Right.
but it wasn't a concerted effort at that point.
right. Dr. King came and pulled it together.
Mhm.
He, they had this whole strategy where he assigned counties. Somebody took, like Orange had counties in West Alabama, so and so had this area, so and so had that area, right? And Dr. Vivian was the project coordinator for the whole thing, right? And he was headquartered here in Selma. He stayed here. Dr. King would travel, right? So, but we were having mass meetings. It seemed like every night. It seemed, and then when the children became involved, when children get involved, it becomes something more than I think the adults plan, because I don't remember going to school after January 2nd. I may have, but I don't remember it.
That wasn't
Of
the focus of
1965.
your life at that time, yeah.
In 1965, nobody else was going. I didn't go to school. We marched. We'd get up in the morning and go to the church, and wherever we were gathered, right? And then throughout I grew up in George Washington Carver Home. And it's a housing project. The area, the side that I grew up on, has 3 bedrooms. In order to get 3 bedrooms, you have to have at least 4 children. So everybody over there had 4 children that they had, so they could accommodate. So each house, and there were 8 apartments on each row. So you got at least in the minimum 32 children on each row. 6 to 4 with the row in front of you, and that shared the sidewalk. So you got all these children walking around, and Snake had organized us where you had activities all day. And you may be in the group that's going to the courthouse now. You may be in the group that's doing nonviolence training. You may be in the group that's doing signs or passing out the flyers, right? Like we've had a boycott for downtown. I think yesterday we talked about the area that was traditionally black. The blacks hung out downtown, just off the main street where the visitors couldn't see us, I guess. Right? One block, exactly.
1 or 2 blocks off, yeah.
Right. Well, on that street, we also had the cheap stores. This one was called a fair store, and it's probably the equivalent of today what we call dollar stores,
Yeah.
right? And they sell this inferior stuff, but you know you could pay for it, we could buy it. It was called a fair store. At that time, Africans in our community were not allowed to work behind the cash registers. Those were jobs for white people.
Right.
And if you had a job at a store, you swept, you stocked, any other things behind the scenes, right?
But in the black part of town, they were the cashiers, right?
No.
No, not even in the.
No.
Really?
No. And the fair store is right in the heart of this district. It was like in the middle of the block, smack dab in the middle. And the man that owned it was one of the nastiest men you want to meet. But for some reason, we couldn't stop going to this store because it wasn't really, we had choices, right? So we decided to boycott this store. And we had flyers made, they had flyers made, and then you were assigned a time to be there. Right? I wanted to be on the boycott day because it's busy downtown.
Yeah,
right?
you wanted to be there in the
then you got to talk to people and you got to do things. Normally I just go around and pass out flyers on the porches, right? But this particular day, my best friend Chlorine and I were assigned together. That was the first mistake.
And you're like 8 or 9 years old.
No,
right?
by then I'm like 10.
You're 10,
right?
okay.
By then I know I'm in the 5th grade, right?
Okay.
No more than 4th grade, but we're standing there. And my best friend who lived across the playground and I were assigned together. And we were standing there holding paper. We only had to stay there 3 hours, right? But we were not thinking. Our 3 hours were from 10 to 1. And of course, it was in the heat of the
Yeah,
day
you were back.
and lunchtime. So, and then standing there for 3 hours is not easy for people that young,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, people, we were handing out the flyers, we had our little spiel down. Please don't shop at the fair store. They won't hire black people to take your money. They're not good enough to take your money. You're not good enough to spend it in there, don't you think? And we'd hand them the flyer, right?
Wow.
We had the spiel down, and it worked for a good 15 minutes with a 10-year-old,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
we're like, okay, and then we had started liking boys, okay? So our little boyfriends at 10 years old are across the street.
Oh, no.
And they're egging us to
Oh,
leave and
no
laughing at
kidding.
us, especially when people would come by and ignore us. Right?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that'd be so funny. They
Oh,
just
they're
swallow.
just
Yeah,
laughing and
you know,
sniggering.
guys,
Yeah, uh-huh.
they're not nearly mature as we were at 10. So we're standing there, and this lady came, this big, fat lady. She came down the street. She was walking with a purpose, right? So I'm just ignoring them across the street. I'd rather do my thing, right? I said, ma'am, please don't shop at the fast store. They want, da-da-da-da. She slaps my hand out the way. Flyers go everywhere. And I am so embarrassed because
there
they're
they are
watching, okay? They
yeah.
had nothing to do with consciousness.
Uh-huh.
It was because they were watching.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, we got together, Cloran and I. Like we always got in trouble. And devised a plan.
Oh, no. To get back?
At
Oh,
that
no.
lady. Because we were so embarrassed. She didn't have to do that. Right. Oh, God, I'm reliving it. We said when she come out the store, whatever she have, we gonna snatch it and run. That's right. She wanna give that white man her money. We're gonna take
it
her
back.
stuff. Right. So, forget all those years we've learned thou shalt not steal, all right? And that had nothing to do with it.
None of the
She comes out of
nonviolent
that
stuff.
store, and the bag is on my side. Where were you going? I snatched the bag and took off running. We were just running because anywhere that you got in the project, you were protected. As soon as you got to what we call a brickyard, you were protected. You could run in anybody's house. Police ain't coming up in there. Those mothers would come to their door and stand there with their hands on their hip and said, nobody came in here. And if they tried to push them aside, they had hell on their hands.
Trouble,
Okay?
yeah.